Okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. Dave Emmons and a Strange Reality. And man, the strange realities happen all the time in daily life. I mean, what's going on politically, around internationally, the disclosure, this, uh, I guess, Atlas 31 that's coming towards us. And I have some thoughts on that. They're actually calling Professor Loeb, they're actually calling him a fake out. He's just doing this for writing books. Yeah, I had a video I put up on Facebook that the scientists and other scientists are proving him wrong. They said it's just more like a comet. It's nothing ET or anything. But I'm not really sure. And I also saw another video of Representative Luna, and she said that ETs do exist, and she said that's not the big story. So there's something coming along with that type of disclosure. She's the one who talked about, Kennedy. There is two shooters, not one. And then she said that UFOs with the these people who come in and talk to her, they tell her these things. These pilots and these scientists who telling her things that I guess she's looking for in this committee. So whistleblowers is what they call them, but I don't think they're whistleblowers. I think they're just people coming in and telling about what they know. And so she says she thinks they're interdimensional beings. So there's a lot going on there. They're holding back a lot. Vice President J.D. Vance has said that he's got a big interest in ETs, but he said they've been so log jammed with everything that's been going on, the wars and all this other stuff they're trying to mediate. He says that they haven't had much time, but he wants to spend some time on UFO disclosure after he gets free. So he's probably going to spearhead something, hopefully, that this will come out in the open and people say, okay, you guys aren't crazy that are experiencing this. I talk to people every once in a while and they'll look at you. They seem like they smile and they talk to you and they want to be nice, but they're walking away. They're probably thinking, oh, that's a crazy one. That's a crazy SOB or whatever. So so that's you wonder that. So you don't care though. You get to the point where you don't really care. My guest tonight, Katie Paige. A lot of people know her. She's been on TV a lot. She has personal ties to the Rocky Mountain Ranch in Colorado, formerly known as Clearview Ranch, which predates Skinwalker Ranch by over a decade. This connection has sparked her interest in ufology as she seeks answers about her experiences and the events at the ranch. She serves as the CEO of the Rocky Mountain Ranch Research and is a co host on the UAP Studies podcast alongside host Jason Gillimet. I'm saying that right? Gillimet?
Hi, good job.
Okay, good. I rarely do that. Katie has made appearances on several television shows, including History Channel's Beyond Skinwalker, The Unexplained with William Shatner, and Travel Channel's UFOs, Witnesses, Gaia's Beyond Belief with George Norrie, Small Town Monsters on the Trail of UFOs, Night Visitors, and UFOs Revisited, as well as Ron James's films Accidental Truth and Accidental Truth Next. She conducts independent investigations, and I want to hear about some of those, and research through her Rocky Mountain Ranch Research Foundation and has presented at numerous conferences. Additionally, she has been featured on many radio shows and podcasts, including Coast to Coast, George Knapp, and I guess George Norrie too, and then Chinwag with Raul Giamatti. Katie is an author of Letters of Love and Light, 4 decades of UFO encounters, experiences, and sightings shared with ufologist R. Leo Sprinkle. I think we're going to talk about him, PhD, and co-author Snippy the Horse, a King family legacy. She is currently writing her third book titled The Rocky Mountain Ranch Crafts, Cattle, Cryptids, and Cover-Ups. Katie holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in visual communications, and she's also got a new book. It's Skippy that she's working on now. She's going to put that out there. So, Katie Paige, how you been, and what are you up to now? You've had so many things. You've
I
covered the
know.
gambit. Yeah,
It's sort of like there's just a lot of balls being juggled up in the air right now,
yeah,
kind of pulling me in all different directions. But thanks for having me back on, Dave. It's been about a year, I think, since
yeah,
we've been on.
yeah. It's
So
good.
it's time to catch up on what's
Yeah,
happening, you
right.
know?
Yeah, yeah. I want to catch up, and you have a podcast coming up soon, starting
I
August
do. I
14th.
finally decided, to go live once a week for an hour. It'll be Wednesdays from 7 to 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So I got a killer lineup for the first month. I started on the 13th. And You can find more information about that on RockyMountainRanch.org or KatiePage.net. And
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to doing that. I think it's about time, to get some interaction with the folks out there. That's what it's all about. So,
I think after reading your bio, and I've known this about you for some time, that you've covered a lot of bases and
yeah.
you've put out the word out there and you enlighten people. That's what it's all about. That's what I'm doing it for. Like writing 4 books and also doing podcasts don't make you rich. You don't.
No.
There's not much money in this particular topic, especially
Ba-bing.
yeah, especially if we're not Fox or CNN big personalities that can sell a book, 1 million at one time. They don't happen to us common folk. But you don't sound common, Katie. You've been around. I mean, you've been on some big
Right.
shows. Uh,
Yeah. But there's still misconceptions out there. I think people just kind of assume if you're kind of out there doing that, you're making the big bucks. And it's really the people that are on the show weekly that get paid. The people that are kind of, pulled in like I mean, the first season they didn't want to give me anything at all, but at least I got tiny little bit. But really, we do it I started doing it just to get answers, and then after so many years of doing that, it was time to share it with others. But the
mhm.
problem with that is you get some answers, and it certainly the research I've done has taken me to some surprising conclusions and kind of new leads and new roads. But at what point you have to start sharing that information with others. And that's why we put out the books and the podcasts and everything else so we can communicate what we're learning and the journeys that we're on. So I think that's so important. And
It
I'm
is.
glad you're doing that as well. You're on a similar journey. And I started in the paranormal world. I don't know about you, Dave, but that's kind of, I've always had ghostly things around me my whole life, and I just assumed everybody did. But,
I have
it's
more now since I've been ET'd, quite
being
a bit
ET.
throughout my life. But yeah, there's a little paranormal things that follow ET events. Like I was telling you, I want to get deeper into the psychological part of it. What are they doing with us when they inject these dreams, or what do they do with us when we're sleeping? They just take our essence somewhere else and we astral travel somewhere else, maybe. I'm not quite sure, but I've had these weird dreams. I still have them, but being under tunnels and stuff. I just had one the other night, and electronics messing up. We both talked about that. And
Right, right.
Katie, can you tell us a little bit about what you think is that sometimes they spook you, sometimes just because you're doing what
Yeah,
you're doing?
it's a weird phenomenon that's happening. Just so I lost my mother a year ago, and it sort of started right after her passing. So yeah, I just those outdoor lights. I have there are 12 outdoor lights are on one string, and
Mhm.
so right after my mom passed, like a week later after her service, 5 of those lights started, and I just thought maybe something was messing up with the lights. What's
Right.
going on. Anyway, so it was a really interesting communication. It happened the one time my son and his girlfriend and me and Tony were there and I didn't think to film it, but then it happened the week later, so I filmed it all different times. And then it didn't happen for a very long time. And then Tony's dad passes and it's starting again. And what's really fascinating, I lost my half brother years and years ago in the early 2000s.
Mhm.
And recently I've been uncovering you're talking about we're hearing the word psionics a lot lately, the psi games and,
Mhm.
the telepathy tapes and things like that. So, and we'll talk about this, but I kind of just recently made a connection to the ranch and we'll get into some of the programs that were happening in the state hospitals, mental institutions and things like that. In the 60s and the 70s, which I believe my half brother was part of. He was an arsonist. He burnt down a couple of our homes and he was institutionalized at Pueblo. And I feel like there's a connection there, even to the ranch. And I'll go deeper into that with you here in a minute. But, and it's definitely connected to psi. It's, in this theta state. So just let me know and I can tell you what I just uncovered
Okay.
about that.
Yeah. I would like to start off. Let's start off with you got Snippy, the new book.
Okay, let's start off with Snippy. We'll do
And
that and then we'll
tell us,
get into the psi
I
stuff.
think I got some of your pictures. Of course, on Zoom, you have to share. And what happened was I put them in my documents, And when I pull up the documents, I get this snipping tool program on there, and it doesn't allow me to go into the other pictures. But I can go. I can walk a long way now. I can go. I can go from screen to screen, get back on Facebook, and then go into your messenger, and then bring the pictures up if you'd like to do that.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah,
However you want to
I'll,
do it
I'll
is
be
good with me.
I'll
I
be
have some
working.
copies of them here, but I think they're they glare.
Yeah,
So if
they
you have them on there,
let me
it's better.
let me. Well, this is a long way around, but we'll see if this can happen.
Okay.
And
Oh,
I
there we
need
go. I
to.
like that. Right.
I'm going to be on StreamYard before long, so that will be a little bit better working with on production. A lot of these people already know what's going on. They talk about. Let me see. I'm I'm right up here. Wouldn't you know it? It's blocking my path here, but yeah, it's blocking my path to get to your messages.
Right.
Let me
Well,
see.
how the Snippy the Horse case came about, I'll just kind of, for those who don't know,
Sure.
Snippy the Horse was one of the very first world recognized animal mutilation deaths, and it occurred on September 7th, 1967.
Mhm.
And it happened out here in the San Luis Valley of Colorado, a very high strangeness location, still to this day. Many things were happening then. And 3 years ago, I was approached by Nellie King's great nephew, Kerry King, who is having an event out in the San Luis Valley. In fact, there are tickets still available for the event. It's August 22nd through the 24th. If you can get out to the San Luis Valley, it's a really cool location, and there's going to be so many great speakers out there at the end of this month. So I'm really looking forward to that. And you can find more information about that event
Mhm.
if you just do Snippy 2025 in a Google search, the information will come up. But so 3 years ago, I attended, his event, and we got to talking, and there was kind of the APRO organization, which is the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, investigated this case back in 1967. Well, those files went missing or they were not accessible. We kind of knew where they were, but nobody had access to them for over 35 years. And just recently, David Marler out of the National UFO Historical Records Center acquired all of the APRO files. And APRO was the organization, along with Dr. Leo Sprinkle, that investigated the Rocky Mountain Ranch from my childhood. So,
Right.
of course, I was very anxious to go visit Dave in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, and the Archive Center, which, by the way, is open to the public. If you go to his website, you can make an appointment. I think he's mostly open on the weekends, but it's appointment only. But you can certainly, anybody has access to these APRO files, and he has NICAP and CUFOS and Original Blue Book and some amazing things,
Yeah.
just
He's gonna.
artifacts and
Yeah.
things that he's collected through the
Yeah.
years. So it's a real, I mean, it's worth going to Rio Rancho or Albuquerque just to visit the archives. So if you're into ufology, I highly recommend it. But long story short, I'm visiting the archives and trying to find more information about the Rocky Mountain Ranch. And Dave's like, he's like, I know you've been interested in the Snippy the Horse case and talking to the King family, and look at what I've uncovered. And he has files and files of photographs and documents and audio recordings and so on and so forth. So for 7 months, Tony Angiola and I worked with alongside the King family and the archives, and we just reopened up the case because now for the first time we have access to all these original photographs. And one of the very first things that was so exciting to me was that back in the 80s, for reasons we quite can't understand, Burl Lewis, who also owned the horse, decided all of a sudden that this was not a 3-year-old male gelding colt, but a mare named Lady, and Lady is actually Snippy's mother. So there was this confusion over the horse's name. And one of the first photographs, and I sent you the photographs,
Yes.
never seen before. There was never a photograph of Snippy alive.
I got some photographs up on our left. Can you see them? The first. Yeah. That's
Let's start. Yeah, I think you have
start
a
with this
photograph of Snippy and
one.
his mother Lady, and we can
I.
start with those.
Well, you want to start with those? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
There.
Yeah, we'll
Who's
get,
this?
well, that's poor Snippy after he was mutilated. We can
Okay.
talk about that in a minute, but if you
Okay.
scroll further, we'll go to, yeah, keep going, keep going. We'll touch on these here in a minute. That's the cover of the book there, and we'll
Okay.
talk about the cryptids.
What is
Cryptids is
this? What is
interesting
this mark?
too.
Yeah, what is this mark here? I saw the picture a while ago, and I wonder what that was.
Yeah, that was found around the carcass of Snippy, and we don't know. I mean, it's possible bear, but they were 7 feet in between strides, and then they just disappeared out of nowhere. Doesn't look like a Sasquatch
Hmm,
print to me, but it's a mysterious print that was found around the horse. We don't know.
okay.
Okay. So if we go back one more, this one I love though, and we'll talk about this here in a minute. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
So let's start. Okay, here's one of the very first pictures that I found in the archives, and I love that almost all of the pictures that are in the APRO files have writing on them, which was fantastic. So as you can see, this one is dated July 28th, 1969. And it's like, here is an 8 by 10 color photo I had printed up. It shows Burl Lewis with Lady, Snippy's mother, and Snippy as a colt. So it kind of answered all those questions right out of the gate. So that's little Snippy as a colt, that's Burl, and that's Mother Lady. Mother Lady was a dapple gray, 14 hands high, 1,200 pounds. They had another horse, a black horse that passed away or died mysteriously the week before Snippy, and he was a black horse named Smokey. And they thought Smokey died from a rattlesnake bite on his hip, but he was about as big as Lady. And a rattlesnake bite on the hip will not kill a horse that large. It would have to really get it on its snout or its neck.
Oh, okay.
So, to see these pictures of Snippy, and then his mother's Lady, the dapple gray, and then there was another brown horse that was named Sheba. So there were 4 horses pastured. Smokey died the week before, and that left the 3 horses. This was just really fantastic to kind of set the record straight and get the horse's name correct and the sexes. And,
Right. Were you
Snippy was
were
actually
you
born in Estes Park, Colorado, and was an Appaloosa. So
mhm.
he had some Appaloosa spots on him as well.
Were you alive during this time when Snippy was a colt?
Um, 1967, I was 1 years old, giving away my age.
I didn't want to force you to do that. You don't look that old. I just,
Thanks.
but,
It's
you,
ET blood. No, just
yeah,
kidding.
yeah, you have, yeah, probably so. I mean, I kind of feel the same thing. But
Yeah.
you probably grew up with Snippy. I mean, or he was there, or
Yeah,
around.
Yeah, what's interesting is so, way back when I started doing the book Letters of Love and Light about Dr. Leo Sprinkle and I went through his archives of his 40 years of work for over 3 years. And Leo Sprinkle is one of the main investigators on the Snippy case.
Mhm.
And I had no idea that later this would all be happening. But interestingly enough, I was married at the time, and my sister-in-law, as I'm going through Dr. Leo Sprinkle's folders, I come across a letter written in elementary school from my ex-husband's sister. And it was a letter to Dr. Leo thanking him for the talk that he gave at her elementary school in Colorado about Snippy the horse. And
Mm.
I have a copy of that letter. So it's kind of come full circle in that regard. So I think there's another, if you go one more, if you click to the left again, there's some more of, there
Yeah,
we go. I
there.
love this one too. That's Mother Lady and Snippy right
Okay.
there. Um, so
Did Snippy have any special qualities? I mean, was he a really smart horse or whatever?
well, they named him Snippy because he kind of had an attitude. And I think maybe in some of the documents, there was a quote from Agnes King, who is Nellie King's mother. And they were saying that Snippy reminded them of Jackie Kennedy. Now you have to remember the time. This is
Yeah.
1967. And Jackie is, everybody loves Jackie. And so, and that he would prance around the pasture with this like kind of attitude. But of course, Jackie Kennedy's a female. So is that where some of the confusion with the horse's sex got started? Possibly, because they compared him to Jackie Kennedy because of his attitude. But I learned also through the documents that he was only trained to halt and lead. He had never been shod, and he was going to be trained to be saddled the week after his mutilation, which is important because Burl is on the record stating that Snippy was the horse he rode which was not correct. He most likely rode either Lady or Sheba. So, through these documents, we've been able to kind of piece together some of the things. And what's interesting too is Lady and Sheba, the two other horses, were very friendly. There's a lot of documents from Alice and Don Richmond, who were APRO investigators, and how they were really friendly horses and would take sugar cubes out of your hand. But after Snippy's death, they became very skittish. Totally, their personalities changed and things like that. So if you kind of want to walk through some of these pictures,
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and talk about them. That's another picture there of Lady and of Snippy. So those are just priceless photographs because they've
Mm.
never been seen before, for over 37
They
years.
they probably witnessed Snippy being mutilated by ETs. That's probably
Oh,
what.
absolutely. And when we get to the map, I'll show you why that is. So this here was pictures, and there's a lot of documentations of other animals that were having weird, like their hooves would grow really long and they were going blinded. So this one says sick calf in Harry King Corral, Black Angus bull and calf were blinded approximately the time of Snippy's death. Now, the neighbors of the King Ranch, they were pretty close in proximity, were the Wellington Ranch. And they had so many strange animal deaths that it was known as the Dead Cow Ranch.
Mhm.
And they were neighbors. And unfortunately, Nellie King, there was a lot of evidence in this case. I thought it was just the first recognized animal mutilation around the world. I had no idea there were so much evidence and so many things that they found around Snippy. And one of those things was this broken and split chico brush that had been squashed near Snippy's carcass. And in that brush, Ernest Wellington and Nellie Lewis found what she called a tool. And she said it was like a flesh-colored gizzard or liver shaped. And so it had some mane on it, and she said it was sticky. So she picks it up with two sticks and she pokes at this thing, and some green ooze comes out of it, which is really mysterious. And it burns Nellie's hands, and her hands burned for an hour. And finally, she had a cabin 4 miles away from the King Ranch where the horses were pastured. And she washes her hand, and, they stop the burn and everything like that. But what's really sad is Ernest Wellington, after being in proximity to that strange tool. Now, we don't know if it's connected or the high radiation. There were high radiation readings outside of Snippy's carcass. When you got near Snippy, the readings were lower. They went back more to normal.
Yeah,
But
Paige, this
Ernest
picture.
Wellington passed away a week after Snippy's mutilation.
Oh, this picture here looks like this calf is floating.
Yeah, almost, doesn't it?
It looks almost gives you that appearance that it's floating. No, okay, you want to go to the next one now?
Yeah.
That's okay. We're
Okay,
going
yeah, we
right.
covered that one. Yep.
Okay.
Caught that one. Okay, this picture was amazing. When I saw this, I was just like, ah, I sent it to Carrie right away. But this is Alice Richmond, one of the investigators, and that's Lady, Snippy's mother, and then Sheba there in the distance. But it says Lady, Snippy's mother. These two horses, Sheba and Lady, were the only horses that were with Snippy in pasture when killed, only witnesses to Snippy's murder. So
Mm.
if there was ever any question about the names of these horses and who was who, all these photographs and documents certainly cleared that up. So, if nothing else, I'm really happy to have brought this to the public's attention so we can
Okay.
get the story
This
right.
picture to your right, if you can see it, it looks like a bottle and a tower.
Mm-hmm.
That's in my office room.
Okay.
What you can't see is me standing here with my hand over the desk, and there's light energy coming from it, and it's distorted the picture. That's weird.
Oh,
Yeah, it's weird.
yeah, it does look distorted. How
Yeah,
interesting.
energy kind of come. My hand is right about in here, and where the energy come from. So if I go into that picture, we're gonna lose everything. So okay, now that's a bear mark. We talked about that.
Maybe. I mean, it could be. I don't know if it's a bear or, I mean, it's weird because the
Mm.
tracks just kind of come out of nowhere. There's only a couple of them and then they disappear again.
Yeah.
And they were cryptid sightings in the area. There's still cryptid sightings in the San Luis Valley. So
What
it's
kind
just
of
a kind of a, they have this platypus creature that is also seen at the Rocky Mountain Ranch, and you hear it as a cryptid. It was seen at Lake Como at the base of Mount Blanca, and they also have Sasquatch out there as well.
wow.
That's
Now
the cover of
this
the book.
that's to cover your new book or
Yeah.
new edition, right? Okay.
Yep.
Now, is this really where all the flesh was taken off of the head and the neck?
And that's correct. And that picture there that we used for the cover was actually a historic picture from the 1960s. And I just kind of cleaned it up and put it on the front of the book because
Hmm.
it's an original illustration from the time. But another thing we learned in the documents and within the photos is, and it's not talked a lot about, is his rear left leg was also stripped bare of the flesh and the of his fur, and then his right hind leg was broken as if dropped from above. So when we get to the maps, I'll kind of show you
Okay.
the original
No.
no. Oh, so this is interesting. This is a great picture. This is Lonnie Zamora from the Lonnie Zamora case in Socorro.
Okay. Yes.
And, you know, so they had landing marks from that Socorro craft, and they actually took castings from the holes around Snippy, and they were comparing them. They were quite different, you know, in size and depth, but I think it's cool that they were comparing notes and looking at the Socorro case in connection with the Snippy case.
That's pretty neat having a picture of Ronnie Segura, I guess. Well, okay, here's a map.
Yeah, so this was in the files and it's big, like, you know, it's
Yeah.
this big in person. So, and I kind of tried to clean it up the best I could, but those, you can see Snippy Lane here.
Hmm.
And you could see those where it's like little dots in a circle. This is where he was milling, and then there's no other drops. And it had rained a few days before, so the ground was really wet and moist, and you could see tracks around Snippy really easily. In fact, so much so even if a little bird came around it, you could see the tracks on the ground. And no animals approached Snippy. Blood was drained, brain cavity was dry, even his spinal fluid was dry. So many mysteries around Snippy. But his back right leg was broken as if dropped from above. There were three fence posts that were sheared off like butter as if something came in. There was a 75-foot in diameter circle on the ground where you could see the rain pebbles like hitting, you know, like pop marks in the ground. Over this 75-foot circle, though, there was nothing. It was very smooth. And then there was five 15-foot circles around Snippy as well. You could see later, what's interesting too in reading the documents, later when the coyotes, so out here it says coyote droppings, but the coyotes went and approached the carcass. After weeks and weeks had passed, the coyotes finally approached the carcass and started eating, and they died of dysentery, the ones that tried
Yeah.
to eat on
I was
Snippy.
going to say the cryptids and the predators who come around the body, once they get a scent of the body of being tampered with by something ET or something strange, they'll take off. They won't mess with it. They won't eat
That's
it.
right.
Right, Katie?
That's right.
Mm.
That's right. And this had all the classic. And what's really interesting and kind of cool about this was this is like the first really well-known case. So this was before. It's not like they had heard all these other telltale signs of a true animal mutilation. This was like the first,
Yeah.
and it had everything. You know, no blood, all the signs, and here we have it with Snippy.
Okay. Here we go. We'll go to the next one.
Yeah.
And
So
this
this
is
is a
it.
close-up of that where you can see they intentionally drew his leg broken.
Mhm.
Yeah. So and his Appaloosa spots.
Oh,
Yeah.
and
So
that's
these are the holes around the squash chico brush, and there were several pictures. I mean, there's probably 150 pictures, so I just pulled a few of them, but very mysterious. And in one of my little episodes I did on Rocky Mountain Ranch research with Katie Paige, I actually did a video with more photos on this, but we found a historic case of two pilots, and I can't remember the pilots' names, but they witnessed a craft while flying, and it had this configuration of lights very similar to the pattern that's on the ground right here, and it was right around the same time. And so if that's connected to this case, if something illuminated down or whatever, it was like a match. And I'm like, whoa, I hadn't seen that before. And it was just one of those weird coincidences that I just happened upon that case as we were, you know,
those,
writing
yeah,
about
those are
the
strange
holes.
holes. Those are
Yeah,
strange holes. Yeah. Okay.
right.
Now here is it.
Yeah, no, so this is interesting. This was so neat that this was in the file. So as you could see, it says to King Ranch House and there's an arrow. And so you could see three sets of horse tracks zigzagging in a pattern as if something's corralling the horses, a UFO, a light, an orb, we don't know what. But you could certainly, the Kings could certainly see the horses being zigzagged as if corralled by something. So you have three tracks of Lady, Snippy, and Sheba. And then Lady and Sheba run back to the ranch house. And then that's when you see Snippy circles milling and then picked up and dropped. So something got Snippy. The other two horses ran back to the ranch house, and you can clearly see those in the markings. And I think in two slides, it's the writing for this drawing. It was just too big to put on one. Yeah, go back one maybe, or forward one. I think yeah, this one. So as you can see, it says three horses running as illustrated below. Ben King tracked these three horses, and the tracks went from one side of the pasture to the other. Two horses continued to the King Ranch. Snippy was found approximately, well, this varied in documents. This one happens to say 250 feet from where the other two tracks led on the top of the ranch. So, to see these documents after all these years was incredible. It was
Right.
really a cool journey to go on. But if you now you go back, you can see his carcass and you can see his bare back left leg in that, and you can see his
Right.
broken leg if
Right.
you can look closely, and you can also see his markings on his hooves, so we can kind of compare those to Sheba and to Lady and things like that. So we do know it's Snippy,
Yeah.
but yeah, you can see that bare back leg, and
Okay, yeah, we're getting out of this part of it. Let's see if I can stop the share. Okay, there we go. All right.
there's just so much more. I mean, this
No.
book is just chock full of just so many photographs from the case, and
Mhm.
I mean, just the photographs alone, I think it's worth the book because, they've been gone for so long. So Tony and I were really honored to have reopened this case up and kind of just get history right.
Right. Yeah. Could you tell me, let's talk about the psychology of this, the psyops of this. What, here's my theory about what they're doing to these animals, animal mutilations, and even human mutilations that we don't know of. Uh, are they taking DNA back to another planet that has humans? I mean, there's humans all over the galaxy, actually, from what I hear, humans like us. And could they be taking DNA back to the humans and regrowing this for food, actually for food, and also for like for horses, whatever. And they're just helping out other humans on other planets. Katie, which
Well, that's certainly one theory, and there's been many theories. I've heard that cows and certain animals have high copper content in their blood. I've also heard, that certain species of ET might absorb nutrients differently than we do through absorption in the skin. So
Mhm.
are they taking, and the blood is high in copper, are they taking the blood and certain, so it's usually the tongue, the eye, certain, genital regions and certain organs that they're taking. They're not taking the flaming young. They're leaving, I don't know why.
Yeah.
And it's different animals too. It's horse, cow, dog. Talking to Paul Sinclair out in the UK, they had a rash of kangaroo mutilations. They've even had sea creatures like seal. So there's all sorts of different animals being taken. So your theory is certainly out there. Maybe that's happening. Maybe they're using it for their own nutrients and they don't need the rest of the carcass, so they leave it. And you're right. Unfortunately, there have been cases of what look like telltale animal mutilations that are done to humans. And it's horrific to see, and thankfully they're few and far between, but they have been reported. So yeah, I really don't know what the heck they're doing. And Snippy, of course, being one of the first. And it's interesting though, in one of the recordings we got, as they're interviewing Nellie and Burl and Agnes and stuff, another horse mutilation came in right at that same time. So during this time, there was a rash of mutilations happening in the valley, and certainly one of we go through in the chapter two, we go through all the kind of hoax theories or other theories. They thought maybe it was a lightning kill, or one of the craziest ones. I'll find the picture of it. I didn't send it to you. They said that perhaps somebody went out to the pasture and built a tripod and bought a big barrel of acid and hung Snippy upside down and then dunked his head in the acid, which
Oh,
is just crazy
yeah.
because you would have truck marks and
Yeah.
footprints and all sorts of things, and none of those things were there. Um,
Yeah, that'd be
you
a
know,
big production to do that. Yeah.
yeah, that would be a very big production. And then the one of the funniest ones, there was a newspaper article about radioactive ants did this to Snippy. It was just kind of silly stuff like that. And of course, course, the lightning theory, and the sheriff out there wouldn't go out and investigate Snippy. And we found an interview with this sheriff, and he ended up getting the nickname Lightning Ben because, they really looked into that. There was a Dr. Leary who was a pathologist, and
Yes.
he examined the carcass and that, and he's like, it's absolutely was not killed. Snippy was not killed by lightning. Here's an old picture of Leo Sprinkle during that investigation here. Look at that.
Okay. Yeah.
Isn't that neat? Seeing all those old pictures is so neat.
Yeah. Now,
So,
have you personally in Colorado? I know there's a lot of UFO sightings, UAPs, the way you want to call them, but there's been a lot of sightings out in Colorado.
yeah.
Your ranch, have you seen a lot of sightings? Yeah. Okay. That looks like a
Yeah,
teepee.
well, out in the San Luis Valley for sure. There's just these, you'll see a light coming. It's not a plane, it's not a satellite, and it'll just vanish. Actually, last year at the Snippy event, I'm looking, and I thought it was just a plane approaching. The bright light coming, and I didn't say anything to anybody. Another person was watching it though, thankfully, and I'm just like, okay, this is pretty bright, and then just poof, gone. And
Wow.
this is over Mount Blanca, and there's a lot of tales about Mount Blanca, and I'm wondering if there's not you mentioned tunnels and things underground. That's a theory we have in the San Luis Valley. If there isn't something in or under Mount Blanca, it's a very mysterious mountain. It's a sacred mountain to the native people there. In fact, it's so sacred, warring tribes would never try or would never battle in the area because it's very sacred. So, and if you Google search like Colorado's 10 most mysterious mountains, a video will come up. That's the very first one they talk about was Mount Blanca. And these three people were out exploring and they find this cave and they go into it and it like shuts behind them and it was like a cone of silence. They were in there for 3 hours. Can you imagine? And it's like the mountain just opened up again and let them out, but they were never able to find that entrance again. A lot of mysteries around Mount Blanca. And of course, where Snippy was found was right at the base of Mount Blanca.
Right. I was traveling in Colorado and I was about, I guess, 30 miles outside of Denver. And in the Rocky Mountain Range, I was driving and I saw this craft. It looked like a dumbbell, like a dumbbell craft. And I saw it going over the mountain and it just slowly went down the other side. And I thought, wow, that's weird. So, it's yeah, they could have tunnels in the mountains out there. I think they deal a lot with mountains like Mount Shasta and all these other places that
Right.
are extremely, uh, you know, a lot of traffic with UFOs and UAPs. But your experiences directly with ETs, Katie, could you tell us a little bit about that, about your paranormal past?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it goes back to the Rocky Mountain Ranch and all the things that happened there, but I never connected, the hitchhiker effect until, just a few years ago when that book came out, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, and they started kind of recognizing that it seems like a lot of people that visit these high strangest locations will sometimes get this hitchhiker effect. And I've certainly experienced that my whole life, like with the lights and electronics and TVs, like we talked about right before
Right.
the show. Really, and sometimes people will go, "Oh my gosh, it must be a dark attachment." And I don't feel like it's that way. I was scared of it when I was a kid. I'm not so afraid of it now. Sometimes it feels very protective and guiding for me a lot of the times. And in this particular case, about I don't know, 5, 6 months ago, we were leaving the house to go get some books that I had stored at a friend's house. And we're walking out the front door of this house, and the TV just came on. And normally, when the TV comes on, it defaults to what we call the murder channel or Dateline.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but this time it was YouTube boxes, and they were all about car accidents. We don't watch anything about car accidents. I don't. I mean, it was weird. If we watch things, we're watching cryptids and UFOs and things like that, and different podcasts, but nothing on car accidents. So I took it as an immediate, uh-oh, I need to be really careful driving to
Yeah.
go get our books, which was 20 minutes away. And sure enough, we're on the main road going, and this woman's texting and it was, normally I go about five over the speed limit, but I wasn't because that TV came on. I was really cautious. That would have been a head-on collision. So I feel like something intervened and made me go, "Oh, you better drive extra careful." And things like that will happen just all the time, just certain things like that.
Yeah. I think we're persuaded to do the right thing sometime. Uh, Now this Skinwalker Ranch, you've been there with the show, and you've said there's some things on the outside of the Skinwalker Ranch that you might be able to talk about. Katie, could you tell us a little bit about that, what you saw or experienced outside of the Skinwalker Ranch?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the really first things I realized when I started investigating this all these years ago, and I first learned about that anybody investigated it in the book Hunt for the Skinwalker when they talked about the Colorado Ranch. I'm like, oh, that's the ranch from my childhood. And so at that point, I learned that it wasn't just the 60 acres, it was really the whole county, kind of like the Uinta Basin in Colorado. You know, we have many counties there. Elizabeth, in fact, today on a text, I have a guy that just came out and was recalling a UFO he saw in, he believes 1980. So, but it's that whole areas has cryptids and UFO sightings and military strange blacked out helicopters, strange hums like the Taos hum, paranormal things, you know, all sorts of stuff. And so for now, I've done 3 seasons of Beyond Skinwalker. And when we film an episode of Beyond Skinwalker, the team's out there for a week. And you take a week full of footage and you narrow it down to 44 minutes. So there's things that don't make the episode. And one of those, my sister, for season 3, my sister came back to the ranch with me, which was a really neat experience.
I saw that series. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to kind of convince her to do it because she's sort of, you know, buried it. She was a little bit older. She was 15, 16, 17 during the highest years of strangeness. That's where Linda Moulton Howe got her start. All the mutilations were going on out there as well. And so she has kind of been able to keep the hitchhiker stuff away from her, which kind of goes back into how we play a role in it, I think. So she didn't want that in her life, and I don't blame her. I didn't want her to have that in her life either. It's kind of a lot. So, but she went back and they had set up a table at the landing site where her and I, as kids, would flip the frisbee, and we had that 75-foot circle diameter. And I got this incredible, like knives burning on my shoulders. My blood pressure shot up. I normally have very low blood pressure, and I just turned pale white. And I was trying to tough it out, and I couldn't, but it was really painful. But what they didn't show in the episode, it really surprised me, is Hillary, the sound girl, had just put brand new batteries in everybody's microphones. So as I'm standing there going through this pain on the landing site, my mic batteries went from 100 to 50. And then Paul walks me back to the barn, which is like 150 feet away, and my battery went from 50 to nothing. Everybody else's batteries stayed high. And
Mm.
then also, my sister's texting. I'm like, have you seen the episode? I get to see the episode when you guys see the episode, right? So my sister hadn't seen it yet. And so we're just texting back and forth. And she goes, I wonder if they're going to show that. And I was kind of hoping they wouldn't because I was having a medical incident, but they did. Whatever. That's fine. It's okay. But my sister was having the same thing happen to her at the same time, but she didn't want to speak up about it. It wasn't as intense as mine because after that event happened, the med guy got me out of there and I left the ranch for the night. I went back to Castle Rock and got a good night's sleep and got medicines and pads to put on my shoulders and things. But my sister was having the same effect. She would get nauseated. She had the burning, the, you know, sickness in her stomach and things like that. So, you know, I was just surprised they didn't put the battery because I do remember them interviewing Hillary about it, but they, for whatever, they just don't have enough time, I think, to put everything in it.
Yeah. Could you tell us? I know the audience is probably wondering what you're talking about. Hitchhikers. I know my ghost buddies who do research and investigations of ghost hauntings and things of that nature. They talk about being jumped. It's the same thing, I guess. Jumped and being and having a hitchhiker. Could you tell the audience what you mean by hitchhiker and how much do they take over your mind and your body, Katie?
Yeah, my experience with hitchhiker phenomenon is, and it started during the ranch years in the mid 70s, but I would see these shadow figures inside the doorway next to the bed. I always slept with Big Sister. I was always scared, you know, put the bed up against the wall. A lot of ghostly kind of things. So footprints in, you know, footsteps in the house or electronic things, lights flickering, things like this were happening. But certain things we don't talk a lot about are kind of like the almost the like you say psyops, the lucid dreamings or the repetitive dreams. I think that plays a role in it too. And I've even heard like when Niz and then they were researching Skinwalker Ranch, and the guys would go research, and their wives back east would pick up the hitchhiker phenomenon. And I thought, what's up with that? That's really strange, you know? So, and it seems to affect certain people which got me thinking. I think the more we put our attention on things, maybe the more we dial in to the same frequency or something. And I think we play a role in the phenomenon. I've come to believe that very much because I feel like I can dial it up or dial it down or dial it up or dial it down, depending on where my intention and focus goes.
Right. As long as you're actually they want us to talk about this topic, the UFOs topic. They want us to enlighten people. So as when disclosure really happens and they come here to see us and they're landing on the White House lawn, then people aren't going to be as shocked. They're going to be expecting something. And I feel the same way, the urge to keep going and doing what I'm doing, even though
Mhm.
sometimes I feel, oh, these podcasts are a lot of work and how much am I gaining on doing that? But I
Right.
keep thinking, no, you spread that enlightenment to people to let them know what's really going on because history has been a lie to us. Every part of history, we can get into that. That's a whole nother topic. But
Yeah.
but the UFO and ET thing has been around for thousands and thousands of years. Matter of fact, they created us something like 60,000 years ago. And I got this Nassau shirt on, and I think what brought me to that thought by keeping the Nassau shirt on is that NASA has been seeing things out there, and they say this one big craft, this one is about 12 miles or 14 miles wide, and it's Atlas 31. And so Professor Loeb, who was talking about this earlier, he said that it's an alien craft, and they're hostile, and people are asking other scientists saying, well, I don't think so. They just think it's a comet. It's just coming our way, but it's been intelligently controlled. And then they said, well, they're coming to pick up the selected few people, take them to another planet. And you hear all this stuff. And what do you think about that, Katie? What's going on out there?
Shaking my head, going, mm-mm. Well, the
Yeah.
last article I read about it is not even going to come near Earth. It's going to pass on the other side of the sun or something like that. So it's not going to come in close contact with the Earth. So if it's not going to land on the Earth, how's it going to pick up the people unless we all float up to the? Whoa. No, I don't know. There's a lot of sensationalism out there and a lot of fear going on, and certain disinformation that I think is possibly intentional. Maybe there's going to be a false flag, and I don't know what's happening, but
Yeah.
I would say do your own research and just kind
Yeah,
of, you know,
Project Bluebeam, false flag, that all jumps right in there. I
and
think
it
they're seeing
does.
something out there, and I think it's probably an asteroid or comet, but I don't really think it's anything. Here's why I think so, because back in December and January in New York and New Jersey, we talk about this a lot. This is part of disclosure. There's UFOs all over the place.
Mhm.
Motherships off the coast of Florida and off the coast of California, and they see these big, huge motherships. Now, why would they float or bring a big 12 or 14-mile vessel to our planet when they're already here and they can pass through a little quicker through their portals and through through these I guess they make their own portals. They can shoot ahead energy and open up the skies, and we saw that in New York. There's some film with some of those portals, those plasmoids that come through, and these ships will come down. So why would they have a big ship coming way from interstellar space, way here to attack us and to do whatever when they're coming at they're coming at in and out all the time, and actually it's 4 or 5 races that live with us here on Earth, and
Mhm.
I see some humanoid people there with us, like Dr. David Jacobs' book. I admire that book because I've seen some people who are not they're not really human. Have you met those kind of people, Katie?
I've suspected. I mean,
Yeah.
and I agree with you. I think some of them might be interdimensional beings. Certainly, there's that incident on Skinwalker Ranch with the night vision goggles and that, and they see something opening up and something coming out of it. Is Sasquatch a ET race
Yeah.
itself?
Mhm.
Just like with Beyond Skinwalker on that first season, I'm taking them out to show them where I had this box encounter, which is something doesn't even make the episode because when you're doing a show, it has to kind of tie into Skinwalker Ranch and Beyond Skinwalker, and they have to keep a storyline. And
Mhm.
even though they film and they're interested to learn about the boxes, because there's been box sightings even in the UK and Trey Hudson and other places, the box is a weird kind of thing. Even one of the whistleblowers said there was a cube inside of a sphere, so these cubes pop up every now and again. But so they were filming. I was walking them back out, and there was a blizzard, and it was just this snow smooth, and all of a sudden these bipedal prints pop up, walk, disappear, come back up, walk and disappear as if it's something's living under the ground. And David Pilates talks about the aquifers, like in the Carl Higdon case in Medicine Bow, Wyoming, 1974, around the same time. He had a box there as well, and photographs of the box impression it left on the ground. That's also a Dr. Leo Sprinkle case with medical records and photographs, and this is a unbelievably great case. But David talks about, the missing people there in the aquifers, and right where the Rocky Mountain Ranch sits are two major aquifers. One is the Dawson and one is the Denver, but they merge right there. And sometimes that opens up caverns or tunneling or caves. So in that whole area of Elbert County, right there at the Palmer Divide, it's very mysterious, like the Uinta Basin, and are things living underground, just like Mount Blanca. And maybe we have races under, ET races under our oceans and other places. So I believe, like you, Dave,
Mhm.
that they are already here and have been here for a long, long time. So yeah, I don't know about this big object coming in, but I don't think it's going to get close to Earth. So I don't think anybody has to worry about it.
They have to be pretty prehistoric as far as technology is concerned if they don't know how to establish wormholes and portals like the others have been doing going to and fro our planet. So this big monster of a ship, it may not have enough technology to whip our butts. I don't know. I hope not, because if they got to come all this way, and they're traveling 150,000 miles an hour, that shows technology there if it's true. But I'm starting not to believe a lot of things with AI going on and with the
Right.
internet showing craft and UFOs and things of that nature. You got to take 50% of it and just cut it out and say, okay, that's not real. You have to really take a look at it. You have to actually have somebody there at the scene to see this and talk about it and have witnesses. Now, do you go outside a lot of times in Skywatch? And you mentioned I wanted to talk to you about the Taos hum. I got the Taos hum. I've had it for years. Do
Yeah.
you have it? Do you have it, Katie?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I absolutely do. Like yeah. But yeah, I live behind Pikes Peak, and we can see the Milky Way most nights. It's beautiful out here. So we do a lot of sky watching. But just like when I was the state director for Colorado MUFON, which is the Mutual UFO Network,
Right.
I was a field investigator and a star investigator, blah, 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 and worked over 300 cases. And I would say upwards of 90%, 92% were IFOs, identified flying objects, Starlink, satellites, people staring at Venus for too long and it starts to look like it's doing this kind of thing. Bugs and birds. And one thing, it took me a few cases to kind of figure out what it was. But people were seeing, and they were great videos too, by the way. I mean, and there were these lights kind of doing this thing, you
Yeah.
know? And I'm like, oh, that's something and it turns out they were always coming over the Denver Bronco football games at night, like their night football games.
Yeah.
And they were the sky jumpers with the sparks on their feet. And
Oh.
they're falling from the airplane doing this motion. And then you can only see the lights on their feet. And
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, so that's what that was. So, I think most sightings we have explanations for, but that's why I'm so big on history, historical cases before we had AI, before we can manipulate every photo and video and, all of that stuff. I love these old historic cases and finding the connections. And with the Snippy case, I had no idea the commonalities there was to Snippy to the Rocky Mountain Ranch. From the hum to there was even a box case before Snippy. So there was a lot of UFO sightings and unusual things happening in 1966 in the valley. And one of those was an encounter with a box.
Yeah.
So there's in the hums and the orbs and the UFOs and and the cryptids. And I had no idea that was all part of the Snippy case. And
Mhm.
that's why I think it's so important. And I'm a big advocate for going back in time and trying to, now that we have, the computer. So there are some good things about AI, right? We can ask questions and it can get this data faster for us, and
Mhm.
we can learn more from that. So
Yeah.
it's not all negative, but
Yeah.
it does make you question some of the photos and things and videos.
Yeah. You talked about the cryptids and Bigfoot. They could be ETs disguising themselves, shape-shifting without a
Could be.
doubt. And it's just like humans. And we've got these ETs in the White House, and we got them in the Pentagon like this, and they're working with us, and they're disguised. And I've seen people who have strange energy. a really
Hmm.
strange energy, and you'll talk to them. They don't have much to say. They'll look at you kind of strange, and they won't have much to go on. And I've seen several of those. I've actually met one, close up in Sedona. But I went to Dulce one time, and I talked to a couple of Apache brothers. They were running this gasoline station, and I asked them if they saw UFOs. One looked at the other one. They were afraid to talk about it.
Hmm.
And the other one just looked at me and said, "Yeah, we see them all the time on the reservation." He said, "Do we see them come down?" And yeah, we see cattle mutilation. He said, "Yes, we do."
Yep.
When I walked out of there, I didn't want to stay in Dulce long. I felt a strange negative energy there. I just had to get out of there. Have you been there? You felt that too?
Yeah, I actually, it was two Contact in the Deserts ago. After the conference, we went and interviewed a family who actually had a second home in Crestone, Colorado, in the valley.
Mhm.
And her dad had passed away, and he was CIA. And so we're talking about all the feds that are there, and Oppenheimer, and you know. Nikola Tesla and all those things, but her family owned a large property over the Dulce base. And when they went to the property for the first time, they were greeted by armed guards. And her brother actually found an entrance to a tunnel and that. So there's a weird energy there for sure. And even now in Elbert County, there's certain areas that feel okay to me. There's certain areas where the energy just will shift. And it's really close around that big Palmer Divide Ridge. The energy just shifts. And I'm like, whoo, And when I went to Blind Frog and I sat in the pond and all that stuff, that's why I wanted to go. I wanted to feel the energy because I really think, we're antennas, we're all magnetic, electrical beings, and we can feel energy and we know when something's off. And I have back to the ETs, if they're among us, I have noticed certain people that don't blink. Have you seen this before?
Yes,
Or you're like,
yes.
this person's not blinking.
Yeah.
Blink.
I've seen that in some of these Washington interviews. I mean, in the committees that they have.
I'm
There's been a
going,
couple of. There was one lady that was sitting back behind this was a representative, and she was talking about a case or something going on there. But there was a young woman sitting in behind her, and she was mumbling every word before she said it. Her mouth was moving, and her
so
eyes were kind of like glittering around, and she looked strange. Then when she saw the camera, she was on camera. She didn't know she was on camera, just to the right of this lady talking.
right.
And then she went like this, and then she just turned her head,
Oh,
and she didn't do anything more. That was strange. And then there was I guess there was a senator. He's the Republican lead senator there. I can't think of his name, but there was an older lady come up to him, and she tapped him on the shoulder, and she must have been a secretary. And there's other senators around him. And then when she tapped him on the shoulder, he just went dead. He didn't. He went quiet.
yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yes, it is. And
I've had other people talk about like up on panels or at conferences every now and again, or even political. You hear it in political parties as well. If you watch certain people's hands, you can see them shift for a second, or
mhm,
like you said, they'll something will shift either in
mhm.
their eyes or their facial expressions or their hands. I'm like, ooh, that's kind of creepy. I have not seen that myself, but it's pretty.
I've seen a reptilian eye in a
Have you?
in a young lady. Yeah, yeah. And so yeah.
Hey, Paige, you gotta go.
But I she turned her eyeballs without even looking at me. She was sitting at a
Ooh,
bar, and my brothers and I were signing a contract for a music engagement. We played music, and but a week or so prior to that, she was dancing, and she was usually they're very beautiful people because how else would they mingle in better with humans than to be
right.
like a good looking guy, or a good looking lady. And
The
this,
Nordics.
yeah, yeah, they come, and she was dancing, twirling around. She had a black gown on, and she come up to me with her hands like this, going, come hither. I was afraid. I felt her energy.
Mm.
And my two brothers, I said, "Look, you guys are younger and better looking than me." I said, "Why is she coming to me?" Because she felt my energy. I've had implants and everything. So she kind of felt that. And I'm glad I didn't go over there. I didn't want to be, I didn't want to. I was a little older than her, and I said, "No, I don't want to do this." But about a week or so later, she was there in plain clothes. And that's when I saw her turn her eyeball around to me, and it had a green slit in it. I
Oh man.
I took a deep breath, and I reared back, and I asked my brother, "Did you see that?" And a lot of people don't, they don't look around. Like you were saying a
That's
while
true.
ago,
A lot of people don't look up either.
yeah, they don't look up and they don't feel different energies. They don't pay no mind to what's going on. That's what I mean. Consciousness is very important. Katie, could you tell us a little bit about that? With psyops and consciousness?
Yeah, so I'm a co-host with Jason Gilmat on UAP Studies, and we had a certain guest, and we were just talking about the Gateway Project, the Gateway Program, the tapes, and the Monroe Institute. And it got me curious. I'm like, oh, I'm going to check that out. So, I YouTubed the Gateway tapes, and you can get them on there for free. And so I started listening. Well, it's lesson number 3. And I put on the headphones with the binaural beats and things. And all of a sudden, I'm hearing something that's very familiar to me. So, the scariest night on the ranch, when we had the hum sound and all the lights go out, and we had that electronic voice and the bright light in the window and all that, that's the night I went back. So, I didn't live on the ranch full time. My mom was dating the gentleman that owned it. And him and his 2 younger sons lived with us about 45 minutes away. So, we leave that night and I get home to my home and I fall to the ground. I have the tunnel vision, the vomiting, full blown migraine headaches, started suffering really bad migraines. And this, I'm in fourth, fifth grade at the time. And so put me on medications. I'm missing school. Migraines are debilitating.
Mhm.
And so a gentleman comes up to my mother and shows her an ad in the paper. And she's working as a computer operator for United Airlines in the Denver Tech Center at their computer center, which later became Galileo. Well, 2 buildings over was the Biofeedback Institute of Denver. And there was a gentleman, I still have my tapes right here, the old cassette tapes, but his name's Thomas H. Badinsky. Um, okay. So I started researching and I was put in this program. So I'd go to the Denver Tech Center and I was learning to control the temperatures of my hands. So your hands are heavy and warm, warmth is flowing into your hands. They put this thing on my head and the headphones. And through the biofeedback, I was learning to regulate the headaches because when you have a migraine headache, your blood vessels constrict.
Right.
So you learn to relax your forehead. And maybe that's why I look a little, because I've learned to relax my forehead muscle. So I'm not, like this all the time in your hands and your legs and that. And that's what they do in the gateway tape. So I'm researching Thomas H. Badinsky. I come to find out he is a navigation engineer out of Area 51, Groom Lake.
Mm.
And he is the navigation expert, or he worked on the SR-71 Blackbird navigation systems, but for GPS and all this stuff. A few years later, he has this program in Denver working with the Menninger Foundation, which turns into the Stargate program, which turns into the Gateway program. He's working with, I have 60 some pages now. This is all new. I've just uncovered this a few weeks ago. And what's really interesting, I uncovered this old YouTube video. It looks probably from the late 70s, early 80s on the biofeedback and Thomas Badinsky and the Menninger and all this stuff. And there's a little boy in the program. And this is where my half brother ties into the state hospitals because if there's evidence of MK Ultra stuff on the Rocky Mountain Ranch, we know that for sure through Dr. Leo's files, that there were soldiers there from Camp Carson who said something's would take over their mind, would make them walk towards the woods. They would release them and they'd run back to the ranch house and it would happen to them 5 times. This was a soldier. First of all, why is there a soldier there on the ranch? Okay. And then the other gentleman that was on the ranch full time talked about taking legal LSD, and he came from San Francisco and was part of Air Defense Command. So there's a huge Air Force presence there. Now my brother's serving time for burning down our house in 1973 in Pueblo State, and he had epilepsy. So in this tape that I found, or this video, they're working with maybe a 10 or 11-year-old little boy named Kevin, and I was in the program. I was around 9, 10 years old, so same age. And they denied ever working with kids, which is a lie. I was in that program for a year and a half.
Mm.
And so you see Kevin in this video, and they're like, okay, Kevin, let's make the rocket go up. Can you make the rocket go up? And they're doing it all with his mind. So I really feel that Thomas H. Badinsky started the biofeedback and started working with mind because he couldn't figure out the navigation systems of these back engineered craft that they had at Area 51. The connections are just blowing my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh. And the things they did to people in state hospitals at Chicago, I mean, this is across the country. This probably affected hundreds, if not thousands of people in families and towns. Elbert County could have been a victim of that as well. So, yes, some of this is unexplained paranormal stuff, but some of this is Black Axis Project. There's no question in my mind about it.
Do you
And I want
think
to expose it. I really want to expose that because people have been um, messed with, and I don't like that.
that's the deep state, the cabal, the Illuminati, whatever you get, all
Yeah,
these kind of groups that are tied in with that? Do you
yeah.
still think they have trouble engineering these craft or back engineering them, but also piloting these craft, Katie?
No, I think they figured it out. I think there's been projects that we're not aware of. In fact, years ago, and I could kick myself, but it was before COVID, and then COVID shut things down. I lost contact with him, and I don't even know if he's still with us anymore. I hope he is, but I haven't been able to get a hold of him again. But I went to Canyon City to do a presentation, and I was early. Usually get places early, and I met this gentleman, and he was a high up at General Electric. And he said to me, he goes, "Do you want to know why Nancy Pelosi wanted those laptops?" He goes, "Because China's been trying to acquire the other half of General Electric." It goes, "When I was at General Electric, there was a closet with all this top secret stuff. You couldn't go in there with paper, pencil, nothing. Anything you got out of there was in your
Yes.
mind." He goes, "I want you to know we're at least 40 years more advanced than the average person will ever know about." And, and I've heard this from other people as well through the years that we've been able to time jump, things like that. So I
Yes.
think, yeah, I think we've figured it out. Can we control it? I don't know. But certainly we have technologies that would just blow our minds. And that's another thing. If we do, and we could have free energy, and of course we're still stuck in petroleum and gas and all this stuff. I mean, we should have Tesla technology by now, and they're shutting it down because of this.
Yeah.
It always comes down to money and power, money, power, money, power, and control. Money, power, control, the three things.
And the
And so
politicians are all,
maybe,
and the politicians are just they're just the small, minute, as compared to the elites and the deep state and
mhm.
the military industrial complex that control all of this. They don't want us to know, Katie, because they're using that technology against us.
Oh
So
yeah,
they don't
we're
want
all
to know
mind
it.
control. I
Yeah.
mean, here, you want to know what mind control is right now? Right here on our cell phones. I
Yes.
mean, we are so manipulated. It's sickening. And I'll never forget the time. I want to say it was in Irvine, New Jersey or Irvine. I don't know. It was at one of the MUFON symposium, and Lou Elizondo was coming out for the first time, and he was speaking. He's like, a year from now, we're gonna have new mind blowing. And it kind of came to me that, oh my gosh, it's not ETs or UFOs. That's not what the secret is. I think the secret is what these secret societies have known for generations is that they want to control our minds
Mhm.
because if each individual human knew how they can manifest their lives and change the realities of things, we would live in a different world, and they don't want that. So to me, it's the power of our own individual ways that we can interact with our fields that is the secret they didn't want out.
My screen's flickering, so you must be hitting on something that's drawing more flack.
We're gonna
Have
shut
yeah,
that roof.
have you been followed? Do you know any MIBs, Men in Black, Katie?
Possibly too.
Too?
Hmm.
Or they're human, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
There's
yeah.
there's human and there's ET, I heard, of Men in Black.
Yeah, when I was state director, it shifted for me. I had a couple of strange, well, not strange, they're not strange, but individuals kind of enter my life in mysterious ways and kind of try to steer what I was working on and things like that. And so I almost got more interested in who are these people and what are they here for and why are they, I mean, we all know like MUFON and these other organizations, their cases are being watched mostly because if we do have technologies that we want to keep kept secret and people are seeing them, they want to know how they're being reported as intel. So we know that's going on. But it became more of a like, wow, I'm more interested in the human people and why they're covering up all this and what are they doing than the ETs and UFOs themselves.
You know,
That's what it
our
became.
partners or our mates or our wives or husbands, a lot of times when you're abducted, they actually knock the other person out in the
Oh
bed.
yeah,
They don't
yeah,
know anything.
paralyzed.
I had an ex-wife told me that she didn't see nothing, and I saw this little gray critter at the side of my bed, and I thought it was my adopted daughter coming in to get some aspirin out of the main bathroom, and I saw the shadow come across the end of the bed. it was kept, my wife, ex-wife kept it dark, and of course she had to have it dark so to sleep better. But this little gray critter come up beside my bed. He's about 3.5 feet tall, and he had wrinkles everywhere. He had big eyes, but he didn't have the black shields on. I could see the whites of his eyes and everything. And it was really scary looking him right in the face. And then about 5 seconds later, I was out. I didn't know what happened from there. But
That's so interesting because the ones that were drawn in Dr. Leo Sprinkle's files from the ranch, they were wrinkled. They had wrinkles.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's, man, this was ugly. He wasn't the
Yeah,
commercial real
ugly, like
spooky.
pathetic, ugly, like a
Yeah.
pathetic, very skinny, almost
Mhm.
spindly arms and legs. It wasn't a gray, the ones at the ranch, but it was really wrinkled, like an old, pathetic, helpless man.
Well, kind of like this is a gray green color. It's so dark in the room, it's kind of hard to distinguish between two colors. But that was one that I met face to face, and it scared the heck out of me.
I
But she
bet.
didn't realize what was going on. I asked her, I said, "Did you see or hear anything?" No. And my wife that I have now, she's had some incidents where things touched her in her sleep, grabbed her leg or something. And I said, yeah. I said, I think they come to visit. She's had some marks on her. I
Yep.
think they've done some DNA scrapings on her. So just to know who I'm with or whatever, they're following me, so they'll follow whoever's with me too, to a certain extent. But
Yeah.
she doesn't like that stuff. She's scared of it.
No. Oh
People
yeah,
are afraid of it.
it is scary. I mean, and there's so many cases of this, photographs. When people say there's no evidence for this stuff, I mean, we've been collecting this for 40, 50 years,
Mm.
the investigators and these treasure troves of archives now that we can go in and look at these photographs and marks and testimonies. And these are from credible people. These are not crazy people that are experiencing these things. So, yeah, it can be pretty frightening, but yeah, they just knock you out, they paralyze you.
Yeah. Now the people at the Skinwalker Ranch, have they ever told you that they get these injections into their minds about dreams and about scary things, Katie? Being
Sometimes it's interesting. I mean, I just always assume it, and maybe it was because of my biofeedback training, because during this training they try to keep you in a theta state,
Mhm.
which is like a lucid dream, right? So they kind of keep you half asleep, half awake. And if you start dozing off, I remember the brown leather chair and I remember I'd fall asleep. I'm like 10 years old. And they would put a buzz in your headphones to wake you back up and train you to stay in theta. And I think that's probably why I've lucid dreamed my whole life to the point where I'm exhausted in the morning because it's like my sleeping life is more real than my waking life sometimes. And it became a joke with my kids. They're adults now, but I'd be, or my husband at the time be like, I gotta go back to sleep and redream my dream. So I'd go back in. If I didn't like the way a dream was going, I'd go into my dream and redream it
Mhm.
and walk through the dream. Do you do that too?
Yes, I've done
Yeah.
that. I've
Yeah.
done that.
Yeah.
I woke
So,
up and I fell back to sleep, and I had the same dream, and then I continued it. But sometimes I have these dreams about floating, flying, and in underground bunkers, things of this nature. But now I'm being pestered by these little paranormal things, like the TV tonight. The one downstairs wouldn't work at all. It's got audio but no video. And then my car had four taps on the back window, really loud, like metallic taps on the back window. And I thought, oh my God. And this is a fairly new car. So I was wondering what's going on with this. And I see strange people at the gym. I go work out at the gym, and I sometimes will see strange people there. There's two of them that I keep watch on, and I think something's just not right with these people. They're here intermingling with us, and that's what all the scientists say, that they're here with us. They're not. There's 4 or 5 different species that are here on Earth, and there's a lot more that's coming in and out and visiting. But I like getting involved into the mental part of it, because I think that's where the ETs are controlling us in our sleep and in
mhm.
our, because the brain is not, they say the brain is a receiver. Things come
Right.
in, and you pick up wisdom, like Tesla said. They
Mhm.
all said, these famous scientists, they said that the ideas come in. They're not fabricated inside the mind or the brain. They're brought in from outside. And what do you say about that, Katie?
Yeah, I agree. I've been watching a lot of, Thomas Campbell and these theories of, the VR headset reality, and which is kind of different than the virtual reality hypothesis. But I think that would certainly help explain a lot of people's different experiences, if that's what it is, and that we are active participants in what we're experiencing, and why we all tend to, see things or experience things slightly different than others, even in the same groups. I'm like, that, and why it would affect certain people and not other people, because you really have to be dialed in or tuned in or electronically or frequency the same in order to see or experience certain things. If you're not on that channel, you're not going to experience it. So I love that. I think we're going in the right direction. In the side games and the telepathy tapes and all that, I think it's the right way to go. And I'm happy to see that all these different disciplines are finally kind of all culminating together.
Mhm.
And perhaps we'll find an answer in that. And certainly exposing these programs that have been going on since, as early as the early 60s into the 70s, and probably now to this day. And I think they have us so dialed in on
Yes.
how to mind control and manipulate I mean, it's freaky, right? You just talk about something and all of a sudden it's pop, or sometimes I'll even think something in my brain and not even speak it out loud, and it'll be on my phone like 2 hours later. I'm like, how did that just happen? And it's the randomest thing in the
Yeah.
world.
And
Like, it
also
freaks
song.
me out.
Yeah, you can think of a song and all of a sudden the song will play. And
Yeah.
it's and my wife, she keeps telling me, she said, your words weigh heavy, so be careful what you say.
What you think.
It's true, and what you think. Yeah, what you think nobody else knows unless they got telepathic skills.
Hmm.
But I just think that it's I get tired of going to the soap dispenser and it doesn't work because of it's electronic. I
Oh,
can't
right. Yeah,
I
that
can't
happens
get
all
it
the
to
time.
work, and tap I I I got
Am I
this
alone?
electricity. I wanted to ask you, Katie, have you ever had an implant put in your body?
I don't believe so. Not that I'm aware of, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I
So
certainly have read a lot of cases and, talking to the alien hunter Daryl Sims and the implants he's removed and stuff. I believe people have those for sure.
yeah, I've had a couple of them. I think I got one right here in my left hand,
Yeah,
right
it's a common place.
right here.
Yeah.
And the doctor said, I'll take it out.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I don't want you to take it out, because if they take it out, they won't give it to you. They'll throw
Right.
it away because of biohazard, is
Right.
is what they play that game with you. Now let's kind of close out a little bit here. We're going into the hour and 20 minutes. So tell us about the book that you got, and what makes it a little different than what you've been doing, and tell us what you have planned and what's your future plans with your podcast and everything. Katie, tell us about that.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dave. Like I said, you can go to Amazon. It's available on audio and Kindle, and it's Snippy the Horse. And I recommend getting the book just because the photographs are just amazing to have. It's
Mhm.
a really important historical case marking the first recognized worldwide. This was the biggest story in 1967, was this poor Snippy the Horse. So that's a big deal. We also have another book series coming out called Flying Saucers, Aliens, and they're just fun little short reads. That's also available. The first one is book one in the series called Gremlins. So it goes into the Foo Fighters and some really cool, fun stories about military men and kind of this mischievous happenings of their aircraft. And it's a fun little book. Um, we have the Snippy event, which I mentioned, August
Uh,
22nd through 20,
Okay.
August 22nd through the 24th, which is a Snippy event.
And what book, who carries that book?
Tony
Snippy.
Angiola. Yeah.
Okay.
And
He's a publisher.
yeah, and I'm doing the graphics on it. We're kind of working them together. Also, I'm starting, like I mentioned, August 13th. I'll be going on a live podcast every Wednesday night from 7 to 8 p.m. Mountain Standard. My first guest will be Ron Murphy. So I'm excited about this new podcast because we're going to bring in some of the paranormal cryptids and the UFOs. So tune in for that. And of course, I have my Rocky Mountain Ranch research with Katie Paige YouTube channel. And I have many videos on there where I'm talking to Tom and Sally Miller from Trinidad, and we go to the Higdon site and we do behind the scenes for Beyond Skinwalker. So there's a lot of fun videos to check out there. And if you don't mind giving a like and share and subscribe, that's always helpful for
What
me
is, yeah, what is that
and what I do.
podcast? What's the name of the podcast, Katie?
It's Rocky Mountain Ranch Research with Katie Page.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's about it. That's what we got going on right now. So.
Okay. And let's see, Rocky Mountain, because I didn't get this information earlier. So I
I'll
get,
send you the links. I'll send
yeah,
you.
sure. I want to put those in the you know, when I do my narrative above the video, and I
Yeah,
post
I
out. Yeah,
certainly
I'd
will.
like to have those links. And I asked you why, if you had implants, because you do look young.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I have an interesting mark, but it's not an implant. But I wonder what that was, what it is.
You
But
must be hit by frequencies. Well, I think we're hit by frequencies we don't know it, you know. And then sometimes when we're abducted, uh, like Dr. David Jacobs laughed at me when I told him about one of my abductions, that I was electrocuted. And he said people get. He laughed. I said, "What, do you don't believe me?" He said, "No, not that." He says people don't know if they're coming or going. He said they were
mm,
bringing you back. He said they already abducted you. He said they're bringing you back with that electrical charge, and you felt that. And I said, "Oh, okay." It is confusing. You don't know
mhm,
if it's starting or ending with
that's right.
these, because they can control the mind, they can control time, and actually we can do that too. Or elites can do that, and that's why they don't want us to know all this stuff. But Katie, it's what's the last word you want to say to the people out there listening tonight? Besides, starting your podcast on August 13th.
I just would like to say to be discerning with everything that's being thrown at us right now. Do your research I'm a big advocate for going in and learning some history. So,
Mhm.
I recommend getting out in the field or going and visit archives. Good place to start is take a trip to Albuquerque and, follow your passion because there's so many places these phenomena can take you. So
Yeah.
I think
I love
together, yeah,
I love traveling out west. I like going out to Sedona and all these places, and
it's
so yeah,
magical.
it is magical. There's energy there.
Mhm.
Katie Paige, thank you for being on the show. This is Dave Emmons with The Strange Reality, and I want to thank Katie for taking her time for doing the show. She's got a lot going on. She's been around, like I imagine, in the UFO field and all this other these other things that you talk about, paranormal, cryptids. So she's been there and done that. A very intelligent lady for in these topics, and yes, and very well read. I had to appreciate that from you too, Katie. And thank you so much, Katie Paige, for being on The Strange Reality. And good night, everybody. Whatever night or day, morning, or whatever you listen to this show, it's there for you anytime. Bye bye.